Well, hey everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of CXN Coffee. My name's Justin Robbins. I do this every single week alongside my good friend and former colleague,
Thrice, Marty Shaughnessy. Right?
Thrice. 4 times, right?
4 times.
Is it 4 times? I don't
No.
know.
Well, we work together. I mean, with Declan Media and Metric Sherpa, but colleagues Hershey, Informa UBM, CX Effect,
Right.
Thrice.
Thrice. And now we get to, I won't say it, we get to collaborate on a regular basis.
Partner.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll drop scheming. I tried it last week and it just didn't work out. It
didn't stick.
It didn't fit.
It didn't work.
No, there need to be more like midnight meetings for that to really play out. Right?
That would definitely help put more emphasis behind the word. But yeah, I think we could probably just let's put scheming in the parking lot, as they say.
That's fine. I honestly though sometimes Marty, I almost went to Las Vegas for CES this past week, and every time I think about Las Vegas, I secretly am like wanting to put together an Ocean's 11 crew.
Okay. Yeah,
There would be a lot of scheming involved there.
There would be. Yeah. My first Las Vegas experience was with you, good sir.
And what an experience it was, Marty.
Yeah.
I'm curious about not to downplay the time a bodybuilder who was really drunk tried to beat up Marty. We'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, that was something.
But so this past week was the Consumer Electronics Show. I'm just curious, Marty, is that something that you follow along with at all? Is that ever something that's been intriguing to you?
I think there was a time in my life where I was definitely more paid attention to the cutting edge kind of stuff. Now I've got so many distractions. I don't need one more. I'm not following online, to see what kind of like super expensive TV that I'll never buy they have out this year. I don't really worry about that so much. But there was a time where I certainly paid attention more.
Yeah, I was really conflicted on whether or not it's something that would be worthwhile going to this year. I was on the media list, and what's been really interesting leading up to, during, and even after the event, just the barrage of emails that shared everything and anything, which was a bit funny to me because they knew what kind of part of the industry I cover and what are the topics I was interested in. But I would still get all sorts of offers on, it was just, some of the things that debuted this year, very intriguing, as I can imagine every year. And a lot of it will never see the light of day, probably beyond Las Vegas. But it's really interesting. It did get me back into the mindset, though, of travel. Was spoiled a bit, didn't have to do much traveling leading up to or even over the holidays. And now here we are, new year, conferences are starting to fill up to the schedule again, but we're also in the midst of planning what we're going to do for spring break. I feel like you've gotten out of that though. You don't have to deal with the family's spring break stuff as much anymore, do you?
Yeah, well, so my kids are 21 and 23 now, so we're Cindy and I are seeing on the other side of all of that, and it looks glorious. So, I always thought it was one of those things where, there's only 4 of us. We get along really well. We travel well. We're a good core group, and I was like, it's going to be so sad when the kids leave. But there's a natural process that happens where I'm excited for them. I'm excited for their next steps. So it's not a get the kids out of a house, but it is like, I'm excited to see them turn into adults and doing their thing. But it is the idea of only having to worry about 2 people versus 4 is pretty appealing at this point in my life, I think. So we don't do any spring break thing, but we are going to Punta Cana in February. So, and we're traveling as a large group. There's maybe 16 of us, maybe 18 of us, or something like that. So,
how do you feel about that?
There's as everybody can, there's good and bad things. I wouldn't even say bad things. There's you kind of get used to doing your own thing, and then when there's a big group, it becomes a little bit more of like, I don't know, what do you want to do? Hey, what time should we meet on Tuesday? Where when if Cindy and I are going someplace tropical, it's like, all right, I'm gonna grab my book, grab a drink, and I'll be over there if you need me. You know what I mean? So the dynamics change a little bit, but I'm excited, and then it'll be nice to kind of get into some nice warm sun. Let's say. What about you?
I like it. Well, on the tropical front, my father-in-law organizes a trip in February of every year to somewhere delightful on that front. We went a few years back, and we're in a season of life where it just wasn't feasible for the logistics to come together.
Yes.
But we are already talking about making that happen for next year. So
Oh, okay, nice.
definitely looking forward to that. No, for this year, our kids have been really keen to get to the Georgia Aquarium, and we've got some family and some friends in the Atlanta area. We also get a number of my wife's family members come to our house later in the week of spring break. So, first half of spring break, we are flying to Atlanta because we have, at last count, I think at least 4 children that are ours. Usually there's others that show up along the way too.
I have been to your house, and there's definitely usually double the amount of kids running around when I've been there. So yes,
And sometimes they come with us on trips.
Yeah.
But I know I've got plane tickets for 6 of us.
Okay.
My wife will be one of those, and I'm assuming my children will be the other 4. We're going to Atlanta. The complicating factor being a family of 6 is we need to get now 2 rooms or a suite or something on that front. But worked out great. Found I think will be a wonderful hotel near the aquarium. Get to do all of those things. So kids are looking forward to that. Then we'll fly back and have some family that's going to stay with us through the Easter holiday as well. But I look forward to it, but I will tell you, most of those trips you come back from and need a different vacation.
Yes. Yes, for sure. So what's special about the Georgia aquarium? Is there anything like it's known for?
If you were to ask my 14-year-old daughter, she would be able to clearly articulate that. I believe there's a certain type of whale that's there for sure. Heard great things. If you are from Atlanta or have been to the Georgia Aquarium, now is your chance to help me plan my trip. I'm still a few months away. So what are the must-see or do things, whether it's at the Georgia Aquarium or in Atlanta? Help me reduce some stress in my life. You know what's really funny, Marty? We're recording this and my wife is in the other room and she just sent me a text and she was like, it's a whale shark. So that's what it is, folks. It's the whale shark.
Thanks, Marie.
Thank you, Marie. Credits to you.
So, well, it's funny. So growing up in Massachusetts, there were 4 different, like when you were a kid, you went on a field trip every year, right? And there were 4, the Boston Aquarium, the Boston Museum of Science, Plymouth Plantation, or Sturbridge Village. The last 2 being like, you go there and go like, well, how's your car? I don't know what a car is. Would you like some butter? Like that kind of thing. So we had this rotation. I was like, oh, okay, you just kind of go through the cycle there. But yeah, I wasn't sure. So the whale shark, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead. You keep talking, Justin. I'm gonna type out.
Yeah, it's good.
Whale
Well,
shark.
you know what we'll do, Marty, through the magic of editing? We'll put a picture of a whale shark up for all the people so they too can learn if they didn't know. So it should be a fun time. Looking forward to it. And just excited to really be jumping into the year. You know, it's I'd say January's been off to a positive and affirming start. Not without its bumps and frustrations, but that's a part of life, and we've been leaning into looking at all of the positive and exciting things that we can sit in anticipation of.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like this January is the most January-ish January that I've had in a long time, where everybody's kind of like slow to ramp into things. I've had some customer experience snafus or some situations where it just seems like everybody's a little bit slower to respond, return calls. It's a unique time of year.
Yeah, you almost need like the shock panels, right? The defibrillator Sometimes I feel like just to get the year started, it's like, okay, here we go, back to life.
Right.
Let's jump in, people. On that vein, and I mentioned this last week, I wanted to jump into the new year doing something never before done on CX and Coffee, Marty.
Oh boy.
And the first thing is that this mug has water in it.
What? Okay.
Because I'm going to need to cleanse my palate. Because what we're doing today, Marty, is we've got a head-to-head challenge
Nice.
in canned coffee.
You should put a big like explosion, like a head, like a right in front of you, like. Yeah, there you go.
First coffee that we've got going on today, Marty, is UCC, coming to us from Japan.
Okay.
Picked this up at my local World Market, was sitting there in the cooler case, couldn't let it go without purchasing. And the other is Super Coffee, Espresso, and Cream. Saw this in the grocery store, and I had the UCC already. I'm like, you know what? Let's see what happens when we put Kobe, Japan against Austin, Texas in a canned coffee challenge on CX and Coffee.
I'm excited for this one. I've never seen the coffee from Japan before, but Super Coffee, I have been a dedicated user of their creamer for 2, maybe 3 years now. That's exclusively. I actually, if I run out, I get mad, and if I have to use anything else. So I'm working through that anger issue, but it is delicious. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I had such a bad experience over the holidays with that stupid latte you made me drink. But it opened up my eyes to say, you know what, sometimes we can't just have black coffee, Justin.
True.
And so this is for all of you non-black coffee drinkers. This is for you. And by the way, we're going to need something, right? There are days where I want a caffeine kick, but I don't want a hot cup of coffee. So this is great if I've got that coffee craving and don't want a hot cup either.
Is there a lot of sugar in those guys? What's the comparison there?
Here we go. Yeah, so the Super Coffee
I
has
wouldn't think so.
6 grams of sugar and 90 calories in an 11-ounce can. Oh, I didn't look at this.
I'd do it.
UCC has 26 grams of sugar and 140 calories in an 11-ounce can.
Giddy up.
Based on that alone, we're going to try the Super Coffee first, so that we don't totally blow out my sweetness sensors in here. From an ingredients standpoint, Super Coffee's got espresso, cream, sucralose. UCC has water, sugar, skim milk powder, coffee, whole milk powder.
Okay.
So here we go. First thing we'll do is I've got some glasses here. We can do a pour comparison and see what we've got. First one up, Super Coffee.
That sounds delicious.
Right. We'll smell this a little bit more. I don't know. Here, I feel like maybe we can get some.
Okay. Looks like a nice glass of chocolate milk right there.
It does, and at first I thought it had a bit of a like the nitro head to it, but that dissipated quickly. And then we've got the UCC coffee with milk since 1969.
Sounds sweeter.
Like I've got overtones of sugar.
Right.
All right, well. All right.
Okay.
So if we side by side it,
They're looking pretty similar.
They do look pretty similar. So can't tell much difference.
Don't confuse them.
From a color standpoint, I do think it's really interesting. So the Super Coffee's got a bit of like frothy bubbleness on the top, and the UCC does not.
Okay.
On the I mean, this definitely smells sweeter. This, it's like actually kind of hard to get a sense from it. Yeah, it smells like a nice coffee. It's, you've got a cheap coffee smell. Neither of these are,
Right.
fragrant and amazing on that
Yeah.
front. But you can smell the sugar in the UCC. All right, so again, this is super coffee, espresso, and cream. 150 milligrams of caffeine. I don't know if that's good or bad, but bottoms up.
He's gonna do it all in one drink.
Could you imagine?
Goal. How's the mouth feel?
Mouthfeel is good. There's a familiar flavor in here, though. I'm trying to figure out what that is.
Hint of coffee.
This is weird because it doesn't taste as bad as this would sound,
Okay.
but it tastes like the smell of slightly burnt popcorn.
Yeah, that's a weird one to.
That that aroma?
Yeah.
That is immediately what I think of here. I think of if like popcorn's been left just like it's not totally destroyed, but there's a couple burnt kernels in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Now for the marketing copy. Bold meets bliss in this creamy symphony of flavor. With endless energy and 0 grams of added sugars, you're about to elevate your espresso game to premium. Or, as we like to call it, super.
Wow.
2 shots of espresso is what's in that. All right, we will put that aside. We'll finish out the can. We'll come back to that later. Marty, if I text you this afternoon and complain about heart jitters, please remind me why.
Got it.
Cool.
Got it.
Now for our palate cleansing.
All right. Do you have a bucket to spit? No.
No, I don't. Then just to bring it down. All right. So up next, UCC Coffee with Milk, original blend. By the way, UCC, the pioneer of canned liquid coffee in Japan. A few things to know. No fancy marketing copy. However, components of milk may be precipitated. That does not affect the quality of the products. Please do not heat tin can on an open fire. Tin may burst. Do not freeze. Contents liquid expands and container may be damaged. Refrigerate after opening.
I got all their bases covered there.
There we go. Some lawyer had their day. UCC Coffee with Milk, original blend. Cheers.
Are your teeth crying?
No, it doesn't taste as it's not as sickeningly sweet as
Okay.
I thought it would be. So it doesn't bother me there, but it's a little off.
Well, and both of these things probably taste better like over ice, I would assume too. Just the nature of kind of being a little watered down, a little extra cold.
Yeah. You know what it is, Marty? It's kind of like a Yoohoo.
Oh,
Do you ever drink Yoo-Hoos?
you know what? I know people who love Yoohoo. I was never a fan. It always felt like, actually, speaking of iced coffee, it felt like somebody poured good chocolate milk into a glass half filled with ice and then just let the ice melt. And it was like this watery chocolate
Yeah.
milk. That was just my take on
Yeah.
Yoohoo.
My memory of Yoohoo, this is disclaimer, graphic details ensuing. My memory of Yoohoo, I think this was probably my sophomore year because a brand new high school opened that year. So I'm going to assume it was probably tied to that. So brand new high school opened, radio station came, and there was a big field day and events and all this kind of stuff. And we're on the plaza of the school entrance. and myself and like 4 or 5 other students on the air for the radio station participated in a Yoohoo chugging contest.
Oh boy.
Now, mind you, this was August in Northern Virginia, and these cans of Yoohoo were just in a one of the cardboard packs, and they were just pulling. They had them on a table, and you were just pulling a hot can of Yoohoo.
Not even body temperature, like above body
Hot.
temperature.
Hot can of Yoohoo.
Sounds refreshing.
Not to brag, but I did win the Yoohoo chugging contest. However, at least one of the kids that I remember ended up violently vomiting in the middle of things. It was so gross. I don't think we're allowed to do stuff like that anymore, but
Yeah.
Marty, this is what makes me miss my youth.
Yep. Giving kids hot Yoohoo chocolate, see how fast you can drink them. Sounds like a good plan.
My 12-year-old son drank Yoohoo on a trip recently by choice, and all I can think about is that hot chugging contest.
Did he like it? I would imagine
He
like
does. He likes it.
Okay.
All right, Marty. So coming down to it, in the battle of the canned coffee, we put Super Coffee's double shot espresso and cream up against UCC Coffee with Milk original blend since 1969. I gotta be honest, even with that persistent flavor of burnt popcorn, Super Coffee is the winner in my book. Kind of feels like, I don't want to say the best of the worst, but out of these two, neither is going to be one I drink again, but not opposed to trying different canned coffees. So if you've got a favorite and you're like, this is a solid choice, let us know, send a note, put a comment in, and we'll be back. We'll be back with more head-to-head challenges here on CX and Coffee.
That was a good one.
It was good. I liked that. That was fun. I can do it again. And I love, Marty, you've thrown out the idea of doing the blind taste test. I definitely want us to do that.
Yeah.
Good. I'm still going to drink it, and all I can smell is the burnt popcorn, but I'm this close to finishing it.
Yeah, you have to.
I have to.
Got to. Delicious.
Delicious.
Kinda.
Marty, I was curious as we were getting ready for today. Actually, my wife had an issue yesterday. One of our kids was sick with strep, which it's been a while since we've had that go through the house. And what was so funny, he didn't have a fever or aches or anything. He was just like, yeah, my throat's kind of sore. You know, he opened up and his tonsils are like 17 times bigger than they're supposed to be. Like, we're taking you to the doctors. Sure enough, strep throat. Not a big deal. They're like, we'll give him medicine and he'll be, stay home from school yesterday and today and he'll be good to go. But what was interesting is they put in the prescription, which, the pharmacy we use is the one grocery store near our house. And normally my wife gets a text to hear that it was ready. No text, no call. Gets to be the end of the day. The appointment was first thing in the morning. She finally calls. And it's awesome. I walk into my office. She's like, you gotta hear about this. She's like, I don't understand why it's so hard for me to reach somebody in the pharmacy. She's like, I call in, and on their first menu, it's not on that page. She's like, I have to go to the second page, not on that page. She's like, I have to go to like the third page just to talk to the pharmacy. Like, why do they make it so complicated? And of course, me being who I am, I'm like, well, let's sit down and we can talk about, why is self-service so just stupid sometimes? But I'm curious, Marty, like, is it just my wife? Is that you? Have you found yourself recently trying to help yourself and you feel like businesses don't make it easy to do?
Yeah, I don't want to go into it. The funny thing, I got 2 points here. One, I've called you before after being frustrated because you're my go-to guy. I was like, Justin, what the is going on here? It's just, it's baffling sometimes. And it does feel like they're intentionally just trying to like wait you out. let's make this process really difficult. So they just kind of like give up and then they move on with their day, right? Because people are busy. Yeah, I mean, I had an issue with my bank. There was some fraudulent charges. I was dealing with, honestly, at the beginning, I couldn't tell if it was AI or it was a person, but it was a person. And, I would answer a question is like, do you still have your card? Yes. Da, da, da. And then a few minutes later, like, where was your card lost? And it was like, it wasn't lost. You already asked me that question. So I don't know if they're like one person's, I pictured like Neil Peart's drum set where they're like, they've got computers all around and they've got to jump to like, okay, now let me go back to guy number 3. Okay, let me go back to person number 4. And they're bouncing around. That's what I see in my head when they disappear for a few minutes. Then they come back as like, are you still there? I was like, me? Are you still there? I'm waiting on you. So it's a funny thing. So now you got me all worked up. Great. So yes, but I want to hear about Marie's story.
You're welcome. Well, so her biggest question to me was why would they bury something that you would think is pretty common? If I'm calling, like why do you actually call a grocery store, especially one that has a pharmacy? Right? I'm not an expert in grocery stores. I'm not an expert in pharmacies. But I can make a pretty strong assumption that common need when contacting a grocery store who has a pharmacy is to speak to the pharmacist. And I didn't go back and listen. I actually might, do some homework and call and listen to what all of their options were and in what orders, because you think there should be a very thoughtful science behind what's menu option 1 versus 3 versus if you have to exhaust all, 10 keys and then go beyond that. First off, you've got probably way too much complication in how you've structured things. But the question she was really asking is like, why would they bury something that you think is a common request under a bunch of clicks or confusing menus? And when I look at that, not just for Marie's situation, but for businesses that struggle with that, really becomes this combination of bad design and lack of customer insight. Right? Too often, companies think that they would, they think kind of internally like, how would we solve the problem? Not thinking how would their customers solve the problem. And the issue with that, right, is if you're inside of a business, you are intimately familiar with all of these things that you're going to operate and view the experience in a totally different lens. And your customers, probably their behavior is very different and their needs are very different. So even simple fixes like analytics on what are customers searching for, what buttons are they actually end up kind of clicking through, how often are they pressing 000 to get someone, right, that can go a long way in reducing friction. I think the other bigger piece of it when it comes to what's the problem with self-service in general, you've got a lot of organizations that I would say is a big misconception that self-service is just a cheaper alternative to human interaction. Right? We even see that with the discussions around different types of automation or uses of artificial intelligence. Sure, there are some conversations around accuracy, but reality is for that system to be accurate, somebody has to make sure accurate information is created and maintained and updated. That still requires a person.
Right.
That still has to happen. But there's this misconception that self-service is a cheaper alternative. And the truth is that self-service should just be about meeting customers where they are and enabling them to solve their problems quickly. To your point, even your story, if you're going through all these loops, you're asking the questions like, are you there? Am I here? But right. I already told you this information. That's not empowering you. And what this really shows any of us as customers, as consumers, is if you're having to navigate confusing, complex, or frankly just things that aren't solving your problems, that to me is a clear sign that that company has prioritized cost over experience. They're sacrificing long-term loyalty for short-term savings. And really, here's the thing. The frustrated customers from the IVR that didn't work or from the confusing chatbot, they end up contacting the business through a human-assisted channel anyway, and it drives up cost even more. So there's this compounding factor of something that is frankly short-sighted kind of conception around saving cost actually ends up costing organizations not just financially more, but there's reputational damage there as well.
Yeah. Well, and I would imagine some of the thought process is, well, maybe they're just calling for the store hours or when the pharmacy is open, right? So let's put that in there, which that makes sense. But if Marie's got to dive, if you've got to go 2 or 3 deep to get to that basic information, that just doesn't seem logical to me. It doesn't seem like somebody thought about that.
Well, and that's the thing. From a self-service standpoint, we have to strike a balance between simplicity, but also offering enough depth if you do have a complex issue.
Yeah.
If I were designing it, I think of it in layers. And for me, that first layer, that is the simple stuff. It's like, what are your FAQs? What are the quick fixes? What's, hey, easy answers? And whether that's a chat bot or even in an IVR, hey, you wanted to know about store hours? Easy. Here are the store hours for today. And then for more complex issues, to me, it's how do we as organizations create paths, clear paths for our customers, first to dig deeper, right? Customers do want to help themselves. And whether it's a searchable knowledge base or even just being able to say, hey, Marty's the expert on Stratocasters. So if you have an issue about, the electronics in your guitar, you can go directly to him because you said, hey, I'm this user and I have this issue. The key, and again, it's a balance, but how do we not overwhelm people up front, but still give them the right options to solve their problem?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. Again, like a lot of the stuff just seems like common sense, and I'm sure somebody just has, we've got to get this task, we've got to get this set up, and maybe they're missing some on the back end where they don't necessarily like look at what are people calling about. You know what I mean? Like that. How do we prioritize, or what's going to better help the customer? And it again, it might just be an ignorance, right? I would think that would be the case, or at least that's the hopeful side. It's like they're not necessarily intentionally doing it on purpose to try to deflect you, and so someone doesn't have to pick up the phone. Like that wouldn't make any sense from a business case,
Are there instances of that? Of course. Is that the norm? No, absolutely not. The biggest misstep, and not intentional, but the biggest misstep I see is organizations treat their self-service tools almost like, do you remember the Showtime rotisserie oven?
No.
This was an infomercial back in probably the early mid-90s, and they had this slogan that was set it and forget it.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah.
That was the Showtime rotisserie oven. It was all about this idea of like, hey, you can put it in, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
That is, when I do audits on organizations and their self-service, it's fallen into a set it and forget it mentality. The way to combat that is how do we if we're an organization, we have to ask ourselves, how do we treat our FAQs or our help centers or our knowledge bases, how do we treat them as living, breathing tools? Part of that's a combination of using analytics to figure out what's working or what's not. It's also just having good processes around knowledge management, empowering people. So it's like if Marty tried to find the answer and it didn't give him the right answer, do we have a way for Marty to flag that if he's an employee? Or if you're a customer of that, there's some way to go back and say, hey, this didn't do what I need it to do. The other thing I'd say, and shout out to our friend Leslie O'Flahaven, who's a big advocate of this. But
I love Leslie.
I think it's important when you're writing, whether it's FAQs or documentation, to write it in plain human language. Nobody wants to read a manual. They want quick, clear answers. I saw on CX Accelerator over the holidays, another individual that I know, Matt, he was talking about they put a too long didn't read at the top of their knowledge articles, and it exponentially increased how quickly people were able to use the information and act on it. And so I think it's things like that. How do we make it accessible? How do we make it clear? They're simple things. They take time, right? They take time. They take intentionality. But it's not rocket science to have something that is concise, usable, intuitive. Those are the missing links.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's all good stuff.
Well, Marty, it's about that time where we wind things down on CX and Coffee's 9th episode. But hey, if you're traveling, whether it's with 16 people to somewhere tropical or 6 people to downtown Atlanta, you're in our thoughts because we know as much fun as those trips can involve, there's probably a little bit of frustration and friction itself that shows up. And you know what? Marty and I are here with you. We took a look at Super Coffee and UCC, put them head to head. Super Coffee, double shot espresso and cream still tastes like burnt popcorn. All these sips in. But hey, if that's your thing, this is for you. Lastly, self-service. If you work in a business, you have some form of helping your employees, helping your customers help themselves. When's the last time you did an audit to make sure it's actually doing its job? That's your action item coming out of CX and Coffee. But until next time, Marty, it's been a pleasure. Always good to see your face.
Yeah, good to see you, buddy. Hey, next time is double digits.
Episode 10.
Yeah, it's going to be an all recap episode of the first.
It's not going to be an all recap episode. So you want to join us back next week, CX and Coffee, for a whole new brew. Until then, Marty, friends, we'll catch you later.